I thought today we might take a look at Psalm 8. Let me share my screen, and we'll go here to Bible Gateway, where Psalm 8 is already brought up. And we'll run down here, copy that and paste it. In the title, we see that this psalm is not linked to any particular historic situation. Instead, it's a general psalm for the director of music. The tune that it's to be played to is mentioned, Gittith. We have no idea what that tune is like, but the psalm itself, Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You've set your glory in the heavens for the praise of children and infants. You have established a stronghold against your enemies to silence the foe and the avenger. When I consider the heavens, the work of your hands, the moon and the stars which you've set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them? You've made them a little lower than the angels. Crown them with glory and honor. You made them rulers over the works of your hands and put everything under their feet. All flocks and herds and the animals of the wild, the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, all that swim the paths of the sea. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. What we normally do at this point is look for indicating words that would indicate the presence of some relationship, and we find that there are none. Instead, what we have is just pure parallelism. We have repetition. First repetition that we notice here, verse 1 is identical to verse 9. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Everything in between then has kind of develops from that sense of majesty. So we're going to set those verses apart, indent them a little bit. He simply starts off saying that you have set your glory in the heavens. He does mention children and infants, and then enemies, the foe, and the avenger. There's a contrast there. We may indicate that over here at the side. Kind of italicize that a little bit. But after talking about God's glory, how the children recognize it, he moves to the heavens, the moon and the stars, which you've set in place. And then he talks about a specific piece of the moon and the stars, specifically humans. What is mankind? In this section, he mentions mankind and human beings, again, parallelism. He says that you've made them a little lower than the angels, crowned them with glory and honor. You made them rulers over the works of your hands. You put everything under their feet. And then he spells out what everything is. All flocks and herds, all the animals of the wild, the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, all that swim in the paths of the sea. So let's come on down here underneath the psalm, and we'll begin to just make some observations here. First of all, Lord, your majestic name fills the earth. We get that in verse 1. Then he says, the simplest understand this. There he's talking about the infants, the praise of children and infants. But he goes on to say that your enemies are silenced by this. Before God's majestic name, you silence the foe and the avenger. So that is in verse 2. Then he says, I look at nature and see your glory. Then I wonder what man is. We get that in verse 3 and 4. And then he says, you've made man glorious too. What is mankind that you're mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them. You've made them a little lower than the angels. Dipping into Hebrew here, he says, you've made him a little lower than the gods, than the Elohim. A little confusing what David is referring to here, but certainly divine or somewhat divine beings, angels. New Living Translation translates. You've crowned him with glory. This line is the first part of verse 5. This line is the second part of verse 5. Let's get this all on one page here. We're almost done. And then you put man in charge of the animals. And that's in verses 6 and 7 and 8. You made them rulers over the works of your hands. You put everything under their feet, flocks, herds, animals, birds, fish. And he finishes by saying, Lord, your majestic name fills the earth. Kind of make that bold so it stands out from the rest of the passage. This psalm simply sings the praises of the Lord's majesty, but it's interesting that as he does that, what he does is say what God has done for mankind. He has put mankind, given human beings a favored status in his creation. He's given him glory. He's made him a little lower than the Elohim, than the gods. And you put him in charge of everything that there is. And that brings David again to say, you are majestic. I love the song that we sing from that. It just seems to focus on God's majesty.